Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in tonight. My name is Ruben LeBron, and I'm the political director for Alianza for Progress. And tonight I will be your moderator for this awesome discussion on the Georgia runoffs. Everybody's talking about them. So we've assembled a great panel of folks here with experience organizing for years in Georgia, but also some partners in Florida supporting the efforts of grassroots organizers in the state of Florida. As you know, on January 5th, the very balance of power of the Senate in our country is in play. We have the opportunity to take the Senate if we win both of these seats. So we're going to be talking today about this election, the importance of the Latino vote, what we're doing to win, and to make sure that Latinos in Georgia elect John and Reverend Warren. So without further ado, I'm going to let folks here introduce themselves, and I'll start with you, Melissa.
Hola, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Melissa Rivera. Soy puertorriqueña, estoy radicada acá en Georgia hace 3 años. Actualmente estoy trabajando como canvasser en Georgia. Es una oportunidad que se me ha brindado, la cual, ¿verdad?, estoy acogiendo con mucho respeto, pero a la misma vez satisfacción, ¿verdad? Porque es trabajar con nuestra comunidad, que es lo más que nos satisface. Nosotros estamos trabajando directamente con United for Progress PAC, Alianza y mi gente. A través del señor Pablo Cáceres surge la gran oportunidad de valor. Es mi primera vez trabajando en la política y pues nada más satisfactorio, ¿verdad?, que comenzar en esto trabajando con y para nuestra comunidad. Agradezco mucho la invitación en la noche de hoy.
Un gusto tenerte aquí, Melissa. Muchas gracias.
Un placer para mí.
Ahora vamos con Tania, de mi gente.
Hola, yo soy Tania Unzueta, trabajo como political director de mi gente y he estado aquí en Georgia por los últimos 3 años trabajando junto a GLAR Action Network y ahora pues en esta campaña, ¿verdad?, por el Senado.
Muchas gracias por tu trabajo, Tania. Ahora vamos con Stephanie.
Hola, mi nombre es Stephanie Rivera. Soy una canvasser con Georgia con ganas y tratando de agarrar todo el voto latino y agarrar el mensaje, enseñar el mensaje y ponerlo en la calle.
Bienvenida a ti también, Stephanie. Pablo, cuéntanos, ¿cómo te va allá?
Saludos a todos. Muchas gracias, ¿verdad?, por esta oportunidad. Mi nombre es Pablo Cáceres, soy el director del proyecto de United for Progress en Georgia y para mí pues es un inmenso placer estar colaborando con otras organizaciones como Mi Gente y Latinxs en llevar este mensaje y este esfuerzo a todos los latinos y a todos, ¿verdad?, las personas que residen en Georgia para darle un equipo de trabajo sólido a nuestro presidente electo Joe Biden.
Y por último, lastly, Jenny Castillo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny with a G, Castillo, and I now been working in Georgia politics for almost 10 years, pero no soy vieja, para que sepan. And I started working in politics back in 2011 when I was a legislative aide for House Minority Leader Stacey Abrams. And I also worked on her campaign as the senior advisor during the primary, and then as the Latinx constituency director for the coordinated campaign through the Democratic Party in the general, and have still been very active in working in the political spaces, and here to lend my support and my ear as somebody who's been pouring her heart into Georgia por ya casi 10 años, pero aquí estamos, y I'm really happy that you all are here apoyando todo lo que estamos haciendo.
No, we're so excited to have you all here. We want to make sure that we uplift not only what's going on in this election, but everything that's been going on the last decade. The groundwork that organizers and grassroots activists and common folk in Georgia have been putting for the last couple of years, and making sure that we have this unique chance to turn Georgia blue yet again, only a couple months after it did in the presidential election. So thank you very much for your work. I'm glad that we can support you in any way. And let's get started. Let's talk about this runoff. Why is there a runoff? Didn't we just vote in November? Why are we doing it all over again? Why do folks in Georgia keep getting calls and text messages and it doesn't stop?
So I can start with just a little bit of background on Civics 101, right? I also do a lot of my work is spent educating folks on what this process is. Si tú no sabes, that's okay. A lot of people don't know, and they get paid a lot of money and they still don't know. But the way that the Senate races work is that each state back in the 1700s, they wanted to have equal representation. And then because of racism and because of sexism, they were like, no, some states need to have more representations. So that's why you have the House of Representatives that is based on population. Then you have equal representation with the Senate. Each state has 2 Senate seats that are represented in Washington. Georgia had their 2 senators, Perdue and Johnny Isakson. Johnny Isakson got very sick, so he had to retire from his position, but his term was not over. So we needed to have somebody to replace that term. And that's where Kelly Loeffler comes in. Because that term was not for her to complete for the next 6 years, they had to do another round of elections. In the state of Georgia, if you do not win the 50% of the vote, then you immediately have to go into a runoff election with the other person who had the as much as you or is closer to you, but neither one of them are at 50%. So all that work we did in November got us to where we are now, because there were so many people in the Loeffler race, and there was a couple of people in the Perdue race. So we really have to go back and win again, because neither one got 50% of the vote. All the people who are getting text messages, we're doing it because we need you to come out to vote. Again, that's it. These particular seats are actually open to anybody in the state of Georgia to vote for. So it doesn't matter what district you're in or what county, you can vote for both the Senate seats, but also we cannot keep this conversation going and not include the seat for Daniel Blackman, who is actually running for Public Service Commission, which everybody, again, can also vote. This is a statewide election that everybody can vote for.
And Jenny, quick follow-up. How close was the vote in November with these 2 Senate seats?
Someone else is going to have to help me with the exact numbers, because they were very close, and that's why it's so important. But with Reverend Warnock versus Kelly Loeffler, there was a lot of people in that race, but we were so close. And every year we're seeing that the Democrats are getting closer at a smaller margin. So the exact number, I do not have it off the top of my head. So if anybody else wants to chime in on the number, please do.
I believe it was 49 and 48%.
Yeah, it was less than 2%, basically. And in the state of Georgia, as less than 0.5%, right? Like means you go into a runoff. I just wanted to add that, in addition to everything that Jenny is saying, the other part of why there's so much attention on the race and why people are getting even maybe more text messages than any other runoff in the past is because this is an important race for the entire country, right? This is, obviously the way that we ended up this election, that I don't know that like a lot of people expected. I certainly didn't expect Georgia to be in the center of the balance of power of the entire country, right? But as people may know, basically, if we get 2 Democratic senators elected in Georgia, there will be a balance of power in favor of the Democrats in the Senate, right? And so that means that we would have a Democratic senator and then a majority in the Senate. And so I think, there's a lot of us who've been here, but part of the reason why, like, there's all this national attention and people coming that, that have never paid attention to Georgia before is because basically the balance of power of the country depends on what happens here in January.
And Tanya, before I ask Melissa and Stephanie and Pablo some questions about their experience on the ground, what do you think of these runoffs and how they affect populations of colors and Latinos disproportionately?
Yeah, I mean, um, I think there's that Latinos have been growing in power in Georgia for a long time. I also was working on the Stacey Abrams campaign, and I feel like that was, you could start to see people wanting to participate politically in a win. And I would consider the Stacey Abrams campaign a win, even though it was stolen. But, I do think that Latinos are about 5% of the voting population. We usually vote around 3%. But we just talked about how the state was won by less than 2%. And so we're talking about like adding up, right? Different folks, different groups of people, including Latinos in this election. And I did just want to say, as you're going into the question of people's experience, we're trying for the first time to knock on every Latino door in the state of Georgia. This is like all of us here are part of this effort. And I think, within the largest operation that the state of Georgia has ever seen to work in this election, we're trying to do the biggest Latinx operation in the state of Georgia so that we can build from there.
And that's exactly what it's going to take to win both of these seats. And I think precisely Stacey Abrams' campaign was so important because it helped people believe, outside of Georgia at least, I'm sure you've all been believing for a long time, but outside of Georgia, to believe and invest in 2020 and beyond. So groundbreaking, definitely. Now let me ask a question to Melissa, and then Stephanie can answer it. How are we engaging the Latino voters on the ground? What are they saying? What is their response to our outreach about this election coming up in January 5th?
Saludos. En mi caso, ¿verdad? Bajo el grupo que estamos trabajando, nuestra experiencia ha sido muy receptiva y continuando con lo que hablaba Tania y Jenny, esta es la importancia real de donde entramos los canvassers. Los canvassers necesitamos dejarles saber a las personas qué es lo que está ocurriendo. Igual que tu pregunta inicial, las personas preguntan qué pasó, por qué o nuevamente. Pues necesitamos ese 50% más uno de ustedes. El estado de Georgia tuvo una participación importante en las elecciones, ¿verdad?, presidenciales, pues así de importante es la voz del latino para lograr, ¿verdad?, esos 2 escaños que estamos trabajando en el Senado. Bajo nuestro grupo, repito, las personas se sorprenden de que nosotros personalicemos esa visita. No es lo mismo, el flyer funciona majestuosamente, pero tú tocar esa puerta con nombre y apellido y dejarles su voto es importante para esto. Nosotros necesitamos que usted forme parte de esto. Y ha sido muy, muy gratificante dejarle el mensaje a la persona de que no se acabó en la elección de noviembre, de que necesitamos ese paso adicional para, ¿verdad?, llevar a nuestros candidatos a ser parte del grupo de nuestro presidente ya elegido, John Biden. Vuelvo y repito, nuestro feedback ha sido muy, muy gratificante. Las personas están decididas a hacerlo, están decididas a llevar el voto a las urnas. De hecho, con el voto adelantado nos hemos dado cuenta de que han salido y están participando y eso es lo que nosotros necesitamos.
Y Melissa, cuando hablas con los votantes, y quizás esto es un poquito más diferente en Georgia porque están acostumbrados a estos runoffs, a esta segunda vuelta, pero encuentras un poco de fatiga a veces de parte de los votantes en términos de que hay que votar nuevamente tan cerca a una elección.
Ellos, como tú bien dices, ellos conocen, ¿verdad?, que en algunas ocasiones tenemos que ir a la segunda ronda, lo que ellos llaman acá. No, quizás no es fatiga, pero es un por qué, y ahí es donde entra la información, qué pasó, por qué lo necesitamos, por qué es importante, y nosotros pues contestamos la pregunta y el mensaje llega. No creo que sea negativo, al contrario, ok, necesitamos ustedes necesitan de nosotros, vamos a hacerlo. Así ha funcionado, honestamente, así ha funcionado.
Entonces vamos contigo, Stephanie. Cuéntanos, ¿qué estás viendo en el field cuando estás hablando con estos votantes, cuando estás tocando su puerta? ¿Qué te están diciendo? ¿Cuál es su respuesta? ¿Están entusiasmados? ¿Hay fatiga? Cuéntanos.
So just like what Melissa said, our approach is so, hey, I'm not, chugging this information down your throat, but I can relate to you. I'm showing up to you. If we can talk about representation. I'm showing up to your door. I have a last name Rivera. I can relate to your story in one way or another, whether it's my grandparents, my parents, whether it's us, as first generation Americans. It's storytelling that brings us together. It's sharing our issues and what we're fighting for to get these votes. And so it's been received so well because not only are they hungry for that information, but they're just like, oh, somebody that looks like me and understands me is feeding me this information, not just a stranger person on TV that I cannot trust. So making it personable, knocking on these doors and saying, hey, I understand. I know what you're going through. Let me talk to you. What's important to you? Conversations with them. They're receiving it very well. I come home with stories every single day that I go canvass. It's been phenomenal to get to just, share with them knowledge, to hear them, and to just, know that they're interested, that they really now believe that they have a voice.
And I would just like to add to the point that Stephanie and Melissa have been mentioning, and Tanya's work going to a million doors, right? We are looking at an opportunity to invite people to the conversation that have never been talked to before. Y cada año tú ves que toda la gente dicen, we need to tell them, but are we investing in the communities that we're saying we need to tell them to go vote? But also, not only that, are we engaging them? So when you get something in the mail, that's your first invitation. Pero if that person calls you, that's your second invitation. And if they're texting you, that's your third invitation to really be like, okay, they really want my vote. They really want me to be a part of this. Y cuando está tocando la puerta during a pandemic, they're like, wow, this really has to be important because they're really showing that I am part of this. And when you think that your vote doesn't count, this is precisely why we're in a runoff, because every vote does count. And every chance that we get somebody to go to drop off their ballot or mail in their ballot or be a part of the process by going to early vote, we get to see the success of what those numbers look like in the history of our world, in the history of our country, like we're doing right now.
And I think creating a sense of belonging and organizing is so important, especially with the political climate and division that we have in this country. Letting people know that you belong here. We want you to have a seat at the table. We want your voice to be heard. You have the power to change things, and I think that's exactly what we're trying to do here when we reach out to these communities. Like, you belong here, you have power, and let's use it to improve our lives. Pablo, cuéntame un poquito de lo que estás escuchando, de las personas con las que has escuchado que han hablado. Yo sé que has tocado en muchas puertas en áreas rurales, entonces vemos como personas que no están acostumbradas a que toquen sus puertas. ¿Les gusta eso? Cuéntame un poquito.
Sí. Bueno, mira, les voy a contar una anécdota. Cuando nosotros recién llegamos la primera semana, que nosotros empezamos a tocar las puertas, luego de esa semana que nosotros nos introdujimos con la organización Mi Gente, nos dimos cuenta de algo que nosotros no estábamos acostumbrados. Yo he hecho política en República Dominicana, en Costa Rica, en Puerto Rico, aquí en la Florida, pero me dio curiosidad porque cuando nosotros estábamos tocando puertas, la gente al principio no nos abría mucho. Después, cuando nosotros nos reunimos y veo que usan el vest anaranjado, y yo pregunté, pero ¿para qué ustedes usan eso? Y entonces me contestaron, oye, pero lo que pasa es que el vest ya está identificado como que son canvassers. Entonces, pues yo, chévere, vamos a darle un beso a los canvassers, y ellos nos proveyeron con mucho gusto los bes, y nosotros empezamos a trabajar con eso, y veíamos la diferencia de cómo la gente nos recibía a como nosotros estamos en la primera semana. La gente ya identificaba el canvasser por el bes. O sea, no era solamente la camisa. O sea, el bes se convirtió en una herramienta que la gente, el elector, identifica en las casas. Entonces, pues ahí como que la cosa empezó a cambiar, y empezamos a ver mucho más gente participando y abriendo puertas. Y obviamente mientras íbamos pasando, ¿verdad?, los días, pues como la gente en el early vote está saliendo a votar, pues ya muchas de las ocasiones cuando íbamos, venimos de votar ahora, o vamos a salir a votar ahora, y recibían el mensaje. El que se lo olvidaba decía, oye, ¿verdad que yo tengo que ir a votar? Déjame aprovechar para ir a votar. Yo creo que este trabajo que ha hecho Georgia con ganas y Latinx y en Georgia ha sido uno bien efectivo, donde han ido a buscar al latino. Yo también, pues los primeros días que estábamos en unos territorios diferentes, cuando salí a los sitios que eran más retirados, me daba cuenta que la gente o nunca lo habían visitado, o te recibían, de verdad, ¿quiénes son ustedes? Y entonces ahí uno hasta encontraba muchos boricuas que no viven en el centro de Atlanta. Y yo decía, pero es que los latinos están regados, como decimos nosotros los íbaros puertorriqueños, en la montaña. Y entonces, pues uno crea una satisfacción bien grande cuando uno llega a una casa y toca, y es un latino y te dice, mira, yo los estaba extrañando, aquí nunca han venido, y a mí me hablaban de que llevaban la información y nunca habían venido a esta casa a hacer nada. Y eso me llena de satisfacción, porque sé que estamos haciendo una diferencia en todo este trabajo, y de verdad que yo le agradezco, pues, a esas líderes de Georgia que son fajonas y que están centradas en la campaña, todo el apoyo que nos han dado. Nosotros, obviamente, es la primera vez que estamos allí, queremos seguirlos ayudando y seguir echando para adelante. Georgia con ganas.
Thank you, Pablo, for sharing that anecdote. Tania?
Sí, nada más quería dar tantito contexto, porque a lo mejor para los compañeros que están escuchando que no son de Georgia, quizás es difícil imaginar un poco cómo es el field, ¿no?, de nuestro estado. Y Pablo, yo creo que también ha visto, ¿verdad?, ahora y Melissa y Stephanie, pero o sea, los latinos somos, aunque somos más o menos 1 millón de latinos en el estado, hay como 300,000 votantes, y están distribuidos por todo el estado, ¿no? Hay un grupo que está como en el centro, que es el área donde dice Pablo, el centro de Atlanta, cerca de Atlanta, el área de Gwinnett y como algunos de los condados donde hay más latinos. Ahí sí te puedes meter, es como tocar puertas, como a lo mejor en otros lados. Pero te vas yendo hacia afuera, y como dice Pablo, ahí donde hay menos gente que sabe qué es lo que está pasando, porque la gente, pues como estás más afuera, no llega, ¿no? Si las campañas políticas, las organizaciones usualmente no llegan a las áreas rurales, al sur de Georgia, incluso al estado, al medio de Georgia. Nosotros, bueno, estamos tratando de hacer todos precisamente por eso, ¿no? Porque hay gente cuyas puertas nunca se les ha tocado, pero, o sea, son áreas rurales y son áreas donde, en las centrales donde decía hay como 60,000 latinos, creo que en el área de Gwinnett, ¿no? Que es donde hay más latinos votantes. Pero te vas fuera y empiezas a ver condados con 200 latinos, 300 latinos, 100 latinos, 29 votantes. Y también estamos yendo a esos, ¿no? Pero eso significa que, por ejemplo, Si vas al condado de 29 latinos, te pasas todo el día, ¿no? Yendo a las 29 puertas porque están lejos, están distribuidos, o sea, por todos lados. Y pues estás tocando 29 puertas. Mientras si te vas a otros lados, pues es más rápido. Pero la pregunta siempre es, pues, ¿vale la pena ir a esas 29 puertas? Y usualmente las campañas políticas dicen que no, pero exacto, nosotros decimos que sí vale la pena, ¿no? Y por eso pues le estamos poniendo todo, por eso necesitamos la ayuda de los compañeros que vienen como ustedes de otras partes también, y por eso tenemos, creo que junto con todos los compañeros que están tocando puertas, tenemos unos 200 personas que están en todo el estado, ¿no? Tratando de llegar a todos, pero nada más para decir que ese trabajo que están haciendo en las puertas es difícil, ¿no? No solamente por las conversaciones que están teniendo, sino porque también está la gente por todos lados y hay como que ir a encontrarla.
Sí, and I would also add to that, Tania, to your point, and to Pablo, ya viniendo para acá para verlo, hay Atlanta y hay Georgia, okay? Those are two separate places, Atlanta and Georgia, y'all. I have been to places que no hay mucho, and let me tell you, one time I went to a small town, and the lady at the cash register went to a little market that was there. She was like, y'all aren't from around here. I'm like, correct. You are correct. The only other brown person there was Dora the Explorer on a pack of snacks, okay? So when I tell you, these places can be very jarring, especially to canvassers for the first time, for folks that are doing this. There are Latinos there. We just need to make sure that we're getting to all the places, because it is a complete difference when you're in Atlanta, then in Gwinnett, and then in Hall County and Cobb County, and really understanding that the Latino community is growing and there are in different places, but they're not getting the information. So thank you for you all coming out here, because it is a lot of work, especially in towns too. When you're canvassing door to door, you have to get in your car and drive another 5 miles to the next door. That is something that is very common in these areas too.
Oye, y yo no sé si ustedes, ¿verdad? En sus países, pero nosotros, los puertorriqueños, somos como medio melancólicos. Y cuando nosotros tocamos una puerta y nos encontramos un boricua, ya uno tiene ganas hasta de abrazarlo y empieza uno, ¿y de dónde tú eres? ¿De dónde tú eres? ¿Y dónde tú viviste? Y después mira para el lado y dice, diacho, me tengo que ir. Y ellos siguen, entonces te ofrecen de todo. El boricua te abre la puerta y sabe que tú eres boricua y te dice, ¿quieres refresco? ¿Quieres jugo? ¿Quieres cerveza? ¿Quieres? Y tú dices, no, me tengo que ir. Pero uno se identifica y se siente bien cuando la gente recibe a uno y le abre la puerta y habla con los canvassers. Los canvassers, muchos de ellos me dicen, mira, yo no sabía, yo no veo tanta cantidad de puertorriqueños, y yo hasta me lo relajaba, pues yo decía, mira, si al frente de la casa hay un Honda Civic o un BM, es puertorriqueño. Así que tócale, y me pasaba con los muchachos relajándole, tócale la puerta para que vea que es boricua. Y salió un boricua de ahí. Así que estamos bien contentos, de verdad, que nos hayan dado esa oportunidad. Vamos a retornar para seguir ayudándolos. Y de verdad, humildemente, le damos las gracias, a ustedes.
No, y Pablo, cuando te enteras que son del mismo pueblo, ahí sí que la conversación.
Sí, de Bayamón. Sí, ¿de qué sitio? Mira, de lo más verde. Yo soy de Hermanas Dávila. Y tú te quedas como que, de verdad que hay un jíbaro puertorriqueño en este monte aquí.
Estamos todos en todos lados, puertorriqueños en todos lados. Sí. Pero entonces, Elisa, Stephanie, cuéntenos un poquito de los condados en los que ustedes están trabajando, y después también Tania y Jenny nos pueden contar un poquito de algunos de los condados que están priorizando, pero también esa estrategia de ir a todos lados. Así es una de las mejores formas de decirle al votante que tú nos importa, simplemente yendo a lugares donde otras campañas usualmente no van. Entonces, Melissa.
Sí. continuando la línea de Pablo rápido, antes de tocarte los county que estamos visitando, ahí es donde creamos la afinidad, donde tocamos la puerta y el puertorriqueño o el latino nos dice, wow, no es lo mismo verlo en la televisión a que tú me crees la confianza y me digas, mira, cuán importante es salir a votar. Y nos ha pasado desde el día 1. No es lo mismo verlo a que tú, compatriota, me digas, mira, necesitamos parte de eso. Nosotros estamos yendo a Cobb County, yo vivo en Cobb County y en el área de Marietta hay mucho puertorriqueño. Nos hemos topado con personas que nos dicen, es que yo no puedo, ¿verdad?, dejar de trabajar porque ese periodo de tiempo de salir a votar, pues, incurre en menos salario para mí, y ahí es donde entonces la información existe, el early vote, existe que votes por correo, ahí, y esa es la importancia. Vamos a Coweta County, que es Newnan, hemos visitado Newnan, Gwinnett County, Fulton, hemos visitado Whitfield County y Alpharetta, no recuerdo si lo he dicho.
Sí.
Gwinnett es donde más concentración tenemos, ¿verdad? De latinos, Lawrenceville, Riverside, todas esas partes, pero Cobb County, que es donde yo resido, me dio sorpresa saber que tenemos tantos latinos aquí viviendo. Muchos, muchos, muchos.
Stephanie?
Okay. I've been to Gwinnett, Cobb, and Fulton, and it's been amazing. At first I was a little hesitant. I didn't know how it was going to be received, but like I said, when they see your face, they're just like, oh, I think our culture is very inviting as is, so they already consider you family. I've literally almost probably twice has been a bad experience. But other than that, it's been amazing. Pablo, I met a Puerto Rican in Riverdale, an older gentleman, and he's like, oh, well, since you're here, help me rake my leaves. And he was older, so he couldn't bend over to put the leaves in the bag. So he's like, I'll talk to you if you help me. and he started telling me his whole life story. He was so smart. He was so genuine. He was telling me how he was telling all his friends at some kind of club that he is about voting, and he had questions. He, he wasn't scared to ask. So it's phenomenal to get to just interact with them and to know that, like, hey, this could easily be my grandparent or my mom. So let me take the time to step by step explain what's going on, because it's important as a village, as a community.
And then Tanya and Jenny, do you want to add anything regarding some of the counties we're working on and some of the priorities we have?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tanya.
I was just gonna say that, part of going to every Latino in every county has also included talking not just to people who agree with us, but also people who are trying to move, right? And we should say that our campaign is very explicitly trying to convince people to vote for John Ossoff and Reverend Warnock, and that's included, talking to Republicans, talking to people who we don't know where they stand, and what we've tried to do is come up with messages that try to appeal to every single piece of our community, right? So we've been talking, like, a majority of Georgia voters are Mexicanos, so we have a certain amount of information that we give, focusing on immigration, focusing on healthcare, and then we're talking to Puertorriqueños también, and we know that because of the history of our communities, immigration reform isn't at the top of the agenda for Puerto Rican voters, which is fine, and so we should talk to them about the things that they care about. And so I just wanted to say that part of what we've been able to do, because we're Latinos knocking on Latino doors, and, like, we know our different pieces of the community, is to try to get the different messages out. And honestly, it's part of why I was excited that you guys were coming, because you're coming from the Puerto Rican community. I think the thing about, like, people talking to people from, like, de la misma cultura, que nos conocemos, porque tenemos el mismo acento incluso, right, in Spanish, is very helpful. And so anyway, creo que esa es otra parte that we had never done in Georgia, como tratar de ver qué mensajes aunque seamos, no somos tantos, somos 300,000 que en el arena política, like sometimes isn't seen as that much, pero la idea es like even within ese número, somos diferentes, right? Y nos interesan diferentes cosas y se trata de hablar con la comunidad de la manera que ellos nos puedan escuchar.
And I would add, I grew up in Gwinnett, y'all. I went to high school in Gwinnett. Hey, I was in North Gwinnett. Wait a minute, I gotta give him a shout out. But I was one of the very few Dominicans in Gwinnett, and now the Dominican population. I gotta give a shout out to Lil Burn coming through with all the Dominicans showing up, and really. This is a state that has mostly Mexicans, and then after that it's Colombians, but there is that sense of that Latinidad that does connect us, that is very much more like y'all care, so me están dando la información en la lengua que hablo, and that's what the campaigns need to do, have in language conversations. And I know we're going to talk about my experience on the Abrams campaign, but one of the factors when I was working and wanting to make something special for a Latino community was to host a bus tour, a tour that was going to our most populated Latino or cities and communities, because it was so vitally important for us to talk to them in their language. But also también, we can't forget that not everybody speaks Spanish, right? So are we giving things that are relevant to the culture for our new generation of Latinos that don't speak Spanish, don't have a mastery of that? I actually had most of my volunteers were non-Latino Spanish speakers because they had been practicing Spanish and they would come help me out. And most of my Latino volunteers were like, I don't know, no puedo, I'm sorry, I can't do it. So I was like, all right, we'll talk to your mama later. But I think it's so vitally important that the conversation is always, yes, we are going to the most populated counties, but we're not forgetting about the counties that aren't as most populated, but they have people there, right? Like Columbus in Muskogee County, right? And going down to Savannah, making sure that we're in Valdosta, in these cities that have our folks, that we are supporting them and giving the information in the language.
So let's talk strategy. What are some new things that you all are trying there on the field, either with messaging, with organizing, social media? You mentioned, targeting different messaging to different subnationalities. So tell me a little bit more about some of the new things you're trying and how's that going for you?
I can name a couple of things. So in addition to some of the field stuff that I said, so we're doing the door knocking. I think that's the heart of the program that we're doing. We're about halfway there, and increasing the amount of doors that we're knocking over the next, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. Oh my God, it's coming. In addition to that, we have a digital program, a radio program, and a TV program. And so in el área digital, we've been collaborating with Lalo Alcaraz, the cartoonist. And so he's been drawing up some cartoons specifically focusing on the voter purging, the voter registration, trying to get people to know about Ossoff and Warnock, and why it's important. So like all of the things. We've been also doing some testimonies from people who are canvassing and from voters that we're putting out. We've also been trying to organize cultural events. So we had La Banda Original Limón come play at one of our events last Saturday. We have some Hollywood artists who are visiting Georgia because everyone's interested in Georgia, pero like America Ferrera has been around. Jenny, I'm sorry, I was looking at you, Jenny. And La Famosa Jenny. No,
I mean, soy famosa, espérese. I mean, I'm in a book, yes. Y ella es mi prima, casi.
Gracias. También la Eva Longoria ha venido. But anyway, like I think we're trying to figure out how to get people not only to pay attention and know that this is happening, but the why, right? And the who they should be voting for. Todo eso al mismo tiempo. The last thing I'll say is we're working on some music. I think it's been really good we had Las Cafeteras release some of their stuff earlier. That Georgia, ya ni me acuerdo, but Georgia on My Mind song that was, I think, really good, and we're trying to create more of that. That wasn't us who put it together. I think that was a collaboration with Galeo and Poder Latinx. But I think stuff like that where where we're able to get people thinking, not just almost like on a surface level, but like on a deeper, like I want to hear people humming the song and then realize that they're like humming something that's telling them to vote.
And yes, Kate, it was Kate del Castillo and
That's who I
America
meant.
Ferrera
Kate del Castillo.
and Eva Longoria came down, and I was helping on making sure they were going to all the different cities, and it was incredible. And I will say, la atención de los famosos que vienen aquí is fantastic, right? Because estamos viendo la gente de salir a ver, hay un concierto, I'm gonna see what are they saying. That's dope, but I'm gonna need y'all to vote, right? Like cualquier famoso que viene aquí, they're not voters here. So we need to get you to motivate yourself to do that. So si yo soy la famosa that you need to tell you to come out and vote, I'll be that famosa for you. But I want you to tell your friends, your friends, that friend you're not friends no more with, that person who owes you money, that ex, that dude that's trying to slide in your DMs. Are you voting? Because that's the most important part here, right? And it's all based on relational organizing. Si yo digo que voy a hacer algo, the other people are going to do it. Similar to how everybody on this call, todos han usado Vicks Vaporub, right? Todos. We don't ask why. We don't ask cuándo. We just know that Vicks Vaporub has been in the family for years, and everybody does that. So that's how the same way we need to be talking about voting. I'm a vote. My kid's gonna vote. My kid's gonna vote, and we're gonna make sure that they come out and vote and support the candidates that are supporting our communities.
Mira, una de las cosas, ¿verdad?
Yeah. To piggyback on what Jenny said.
Oh, Stephanie?
¿Me escuchan?
Go ahead.
Okay.
To piggyback off what Jenny said too, there's been a lot of times where the person that we're looking for doesn't answer the door, or we see someone on the street. It's very important to just spark conversations, to plant seeds, because even if that person can vote, or whatever the situation may be, everybody knows somebody that can vote. Everybody's at least one person. So it's really important to have conversations with just everybody, your neighbor, the person at the grocery store, the person at the gas station, because it's imperative. We have no choice. We cannot afford for not one person that that's eligible to vote to not vote.
Yes, that relational organizing that Jenny was talking about. And it's something that we've really been seeing over and over again, that when you hear a message from someone that you know, someone that you trust, it's much more effective than when you hear it from a stranger. So Jenny, you have me cracking up there for like a good 30 seconds. Don't go on dates with people that don't vote, folks. Make sure that they vote before you go.
That's right. One of my favorite dates back in 2018 was a canvas date, y'all. They wanted to hang out. I said, well, come, vamos tocar puertas, and we did. It didn't work out, but it's fine. We ended up, having other wins, but it's a really good way to increase increase your social responsibility by doing.
I mean, if they're not down for a canvassing shift, it's just not going to work out. So. But Pablo,
una de las cosas, ¿verdad? Que yo me he dado cuenta y que estoy contento por eso, porque nosotros acá en Florida hemos luchado mucho por criollizar las campañas políticas, que no sean una campaña solamente para los anglos. Y cuando yo fui a las actividades, estoy yendo a las actividades, yo estaba encantado, porque yo digo, aquí están llevando el mensaje correcto, que es que de la forma que se toca a un latino es con fiesta. Y entonces yo vi la banda El Limón, que yo solamente la he visto en los Grammy, y cuando yo estaba ahí, ellos hablando con todo el mundo, y yo decía, wow, pero tú sabes, esto es lo que hay que hacer. O sea, los anglos tienen que entender que esto que nosotros estamos haciendo es identificarnos con nuestras razas, y así los vamos a poder interesar en los issues de la comunidad y en los issues que nos afectan. Si nosotros cogemos un rotulito y lo ponemos frente a la casa, como hacen los anglos, y no hacemos más nada, pues no tiene ese significado como, mira, vengan para acá, nosotros aquí te vamos a traer tu música, tu comida, tu gente, y ellos se identifican y se interesan por lo que nos afecta. No se segregan. Y de verdad que esas actividades, tanto, ¿verdad? Con las artistas como la actividad que hicimos en el teatro y en el parque, me sentí excelentemente bien, y la gente estaba contenta. Así que la felicito, sé que están ahí, mira, haciendo lo que hay que hacer para sacar nuestra comunidad.
Pablo, ese es un punto excelente. Como tú bien sabes, nosotros hicimos muchísimas caravanas aquí en el centro de Florida para las presidenciales en noviembre. Yo de hecho tuve la oportunidad de hablar con un reportero que no era de Estados Unidos y él no entendía el concepto de por qué nosotros hacíamos esas caravanas. Él no entendía cómo era que ayudaban a sacar el voto. Y básicamente lo que yo le decía que era como que el lenguaje de nuestra gente, era como nuestra gente sabe hacer política en Puerto Rico. Todos nosotros crecimos con papás o abuelos o alguien familiar yendo a una de esas caravanas y forzándonos a mover las banderitas. Así
sí,
que...
no, y tú sabes que nuestro país, la política es como el deporte nacional, donde el 85% de los puertorriqueños votan en la isla. Entonces yo digo, ¿y por qué aquí en Estados Unidos no votamos? O sea, nos falta todavía mucho por recorrer, muchas puertas que tocar. Y Jenny, que es de República Dominicana, yo hago campaña en República Dominicana desde el 2000 y es distinto. O sea, los dominicanos también, yo los he visto irse detrás del presidente descalzo, corriendo millas detrás de su líder. Y entonces todo eso, todas estas campañas lo que hacen es enriquecer a uno y buscar los puntos donde nosotros podemos mejorar y unir más a nuestras comunidades.
Y Pablo, ¿cómo ha sido esa experiencia y cuáles son las diferencias más marcadas que has visto entre correr una campaña en Georgia contra Central Florida?
Bueno, son diferentes en el sentido de que pues el population de aquí de Florida es bien alto en latinos versus Georgia. Y aquí un ejemplo, un canvasser te puede visitar 200 casas en un turno de trabajo, versus allá que te puede visitar tal vez la mitad. Pero lo más que me gusta de Georgia es que es algo más novel. Aquí es como que algo más normal, pero allá es algo más novel porque la gente como que te espera. Cuando tú le tocas la puerta, como que hasta muchos de ellos se sorprenden. Sí, buena. Entonces cuando tú le dices, usted es María Rodríguez, y esa persona dice, ¿y cómo sabe mi nombre? ¿Quién es este que sabe mi nombre? Y yo le digo, y ahí vive Pedro, José, y conoce todos los que viven aquí. Y entonces ahí entran en una confianza y te empiezan a hablar más relajado y te contestan las preguntas, ¿sabes? De verdad que esto es un trabajo que hay que gustarle, que hay que llevarlo en la sangre. Mira, yo felicito a Melissa y la escogí a ella, ¿verdad? Porque me di cuenta que ella hacía el trabajo con pasión. Y este trabajo, que es un trabajo difícil, se ve fácil, pero es difícil. Ella lo ha manejado en su primera vez como si hubiera estado toda la vida trabajando con nosotros. Y de verdad la felicito por ese esfuerzo. La otra joven también se expresa muy bien. No sé, ¿verdad?, cuánto tiempo lleva haciendo esto, pero eso es lo que nosotros buscamos. Nosotros nos vamos poniendo viejitos y tienes que entrar en la juventud a hacer este trabajo, y que llame, tú sabes, a otras edades. Rubén es un nene, puede ser hijo mío, y y ya lleva, ¿verdad?, muchos años en esto de campaña con su corta edad, pero eso es lo que queremos, envolver a la gente que sigan este legado para en algún futuro, yo espero verlo antes de morir, que haya un presidente que sea latino.
Amén.
Señor.
Amén.
Yo quiero aportar algo, Rubén, si me lo permites,
Sí, claro.
¿verdad? De mi experiencia, yo sé que las organizaciones, las estrategias que utilizan, pues son masivas, son lo que se dedican al marketing, a todo lo que es digital. Nosotras como canvassers lo que hacemos es calle, ¿verdad? Contacto directo con las personas. Tú dejarles saber, ¿verdad? Nosotros los latinos somos trabajadores y venimos a este país a trabajar y echar para adelante. Y tenemos un % grande de lo que son negocios propios, negocios pequeños. Tú dejarle o darle la información de que tenemos un John Ossoff que apoya una legislación para reducir impuestos, ¿verdad? De pequeños negocios o de familias trabajadoras. La familia le toca y dice, wow, entonces yo tengo beneficio dentro de lo que es el salir a votar, porque me pasó en una de nuestras visitas donde la persona me decía, pero es que yo con mi voto eso pues ni sube ni nada, yo sigo cobrando lo mismo. Y cuando tocamos el tema de una legislación para reducir impuestos, ahí es donde la persona dice, wow, pues entonces por alguna parte a mí me beneficiaría. Una reforma de salud, ¿verdad? Que todos los estadounidenses tengamos acceso. Nos importa como padres, ¿verdad? Que tenemos niños y para nosotros la salud de nuestros hijos es importante. Y pues yo creo que como canvassers, nuestras estrategias es información de primera mano, información real, ¿verdad? Y que ellos conozcan que no solamente voy a seguir cobrando lo mismo la persona que esté allá arriba, es que con un poco de empuje, ¿verdad? Como decimos nosotros, tenemos beneficios en diferentes ámbitos.
Entonces, Stephanie, cuéntanos un poquito cuáles han sido algunos de los mejores momentos en tu experiencia como canvasser por allá en Georgia.
Ok, me pasó la semana pasada actualmente. Me pregunté por la persona, cómo está, entonces me contestó ella y su mamá. Y empecé a hablar con ella, y ella sabía inglés, pero empecé a hablar con ella en español para que su mamá también entendiera. Y después viene la abuelita detrás de la mamá y estoy hablando de la importancia, las fechas, toda la información que está en el boletín que nosotros compartimos con ellos. Y al final, cuando me iba, la abuelita viene y me dijo, ¿puedo hablar contigo o por ti? Y me dio las gracias por hacer el trabajo, me dio las gracias porque no todos los jóvenes nos importa, no me tiene que importar, pero sí me importa por el sacrificio que hicieron mis ancestors.
Creo que esos son los mejores momentos, cuando te encuentras a alguien que te agradece por tu trabajo, cuando te encuentras que ayuda, que quizás no sabía que podía registrarse, como que valida todo el trabajo que tú has hecho. Así que, folks, when you're getting a text, a door knock, or a call from an organizer, be nice to them. You know, it's hard work.
Yeah.
Very long hours. It doesn't hurt.
Please be nice. Come on.
I know. I was having this conversation with my friends, and I know it's annoying. We're almost on the other side, but this is really about these marginalized communities. This work, like seeing it firsthand, and then just seeing early voting numbers, it shows that it's working. Even if it's annoying to you, it's working for these communities that don't have access to information like the millennials do, or just average young people. So hopefully everyone is aware that it's over in 2 weeks and we can just get back to normal life.
Tanya, so you ran the Gente for Abrams campaign along with the Georgia Latino Alliance Action Network in 2008. Tell us a little bit more about that campaign and also how it's been informing your work and your strategizing as for 2020 and now the runoffs.
Yeah, thank you. So that's right. In 2018, we ran a campaign to convince Latinos to support Stacey Abrams for governor. We did it in the primary and in the general. And in the primary, as you can imagine, it's similar to what's going on now, right? Because a lot of people don't know what a primary is, have never participated in a primary, and so part of it was education, and then like the other part was talking to people about the candidate and what it meant, what it could mean for the Latino community, right? For someone like Stacey Abrams to be governor. We also had a strong ground game. We were knocking on doors. We weren't yet in the place where we are now, so we didn't reach out throughout the state, but we had a good like number of people up in the Atlanta area and then in southern Georgia. I think it was something that was really important for us because Stacey Abrams was actually the first political endorsement that Mi Gente had ever done. We had done campaigns like we did against Arpaio, we like mobilized against other people, but for a political candidate, Stacey Abrams was the first. And I think because it was something that was so important for the people of Georgia, and as we've seen, it was actually something that's been really important for the country, right? To see Stacey Abrams fight post the election and build up fair fight. I'll say, in terms of how it connects to some of the work that we've done now, three things. One, we have better data than we've had before because of that campaign that we did. Pablo and Stephanie and other people have mentioned it, like because there's no good data about Latinos, because we've never been reached out to. And like by data, I mean literally like their names, how they voted, their addresses, their phone numbers. Building off the stuff that we had in 2018 has been really helpful. So we're not starting from zero. We're starting from work that we've built. The second thing is that I think it really gave us a sense that there is a lot of energy for Latino organizing in the state of Georgia around political work. GLAR in particular and Mi Gente had really been doing a lot of work in Georgia around immigration reform and immigrant rights and deportations and getting people out of detention. And so we know that there's energy there, but this was the first time that we were getting into politics. And it's, I think, been really good to see it. The last thing I'll say is, we had some victories in the general. We were able to kick out 2 racist sheriffs from Gwinnett County and from Cobb County and get like some good Democratic sheriffs who now have a good position on some of our policies because we've worked with them. And so that's been very exciting and something that we're building off of. And sorry, the last thing I was going to say is actually just to acknowledge that a lot of the work that we've been doing here as Latinos is also building off some of the work that Black-led organizations and Black civil rights leaders have done for years and years. And I mentioned Fair Fight, and I think that's one organization that's important, but there's been many. Fair Fight is the organization that Stacey Abrams founded after the election was stolen, really specifically to think about how will we defend the rights of our voters in the state of Georgia, given all the fraud and given all the voter suppression. And we've been really following their lead, right? From seeing how they're organizing, them telling us how things are going in the state and in the different counties. And so anyway, just to say, like, building off the work that we did for Stacey Abrams, but definitely grateful for a lot of the shoulders that we're standing on, particularly as Black organizers.
Yeah, and you also had Deborah, the first district attorney, Puerto Rican in the country, right?
Yeah.
Definitely in Georgia. And I think definitely in Georgia and in our county, but and in that county specifically. But yes, she's dope. Deborah's dope. And I cannot not talk about Stacey because Stacey's my best friend, y'all. So back in setback, the only reason I do this work is because of Stacey. She was the one who chose me, who actually reached out to make sure that her staff looked like the state of Georgia. And through my volunteer work, I was encouraged to apply and was able to see a new world because of Stacey. So I will always and forever be speaking good graces about Stacey Abrams because ella es la leader yes. For real. And I taught her some Spanish. So some people are like, is she your tia? I'm like, no, she's not. Like, but she means so much. And what she's done, not only for me personally, but for my professional work, has been to show that leadership, right? It's not about the solitary person. And this is what made her and still makes her such a wonderful leader, because she's always thinking about who is coming after us, right? Who will be here once we build this infrastructure, who benefits from it. So all that, me going into small towns and small areas of this state, is based on this vision that she had, because it's not just about one Georgia, it's about the whole Georgia. Black, brown, API communities coming together, a coalition of sorts, and her building, even though we're not getting the result that we wanted in 2018, nobody left that room defeated. We left with hope that this could happen again, and that's why we knew that Georgia would turn blue, y'all. So all of this is in honor and glory to Stacey Abrams, and she knows it, because she is that person. She was the one who built this structure to say it's not just knocking on some doors, it's knocking on all doors and meeting people where they are. So Stacey will forever, always, siempre. Si no lo saben aquí, van a saber that Stacey es la líder que necesitamos a cada vez. And she has led the support too of the Latino community here in Georgia. Like, she has been so supportive from day one. So it's all about that idea of coalition building. And when I stepped into that role working on her campaign, it was because I knew that the Latino community needed to hear from people that were supporting this campaign, because the campaign supported them.
Yeah.
I think we all stand Stacey Abrams here. If she learns Spanish, she might just take over the world. So, Pablo, ¿ibas a decir algo?
Sí, que también compartimos con una representante de apellido López, que también es muy buena gente.
Or Zulma. Zulma or Brenda. ¿Cuál de ellas?
Brenda, la que Brenda es mexicana.
Sí, Brenda. Y ahora tenemos Zulma.
Ah, muy bien.
También
yo quiero
López.
Que usted sepa, cuando yo me mudé aquí a la Florida, nosotros solamente teníamos un solo oficial electo, latino aquí, y ahora tenemos sobre 30 en 10 años. Y de verdad para nosotros es una satisfacción poder tener gente que conozca nuestra cultura, que conozca nuestros países, que estén interesados en ayudarnos. Y yo sé que Georgia, desde que pasó ahora que fue el estado decisivo en unas elecciones, yo sé que ahora van a tener los ojos bien puestos en Georgia, que todo el mundo lo daba por perdido y decía, no, Georgia es republicano. Y mira, la sorpresa ha sido Georgia. Ese triunfo se lo ha dado Georgia, ¿verdad? A nuestro presidente. Eso es bien importante. Y yo espero que para las próximas presidenciales tengamos más oficiales electos que nos ayuden a seguir trabajando por la comunidad latina.
Bueno, Pablo, pues muchas gracias. Vamos a darle como 20 segundos a cada uno para que nos den sus closing comments, your last hits to people watching this. Entonces comencemos con Melissa. Y después hacemos unas preguntitas aquí.
Pues para ser mi primera vez trabajando en política, yo de profesión, lo que soy en Puerto Rico, es trabajo social. Los trabajadores sociales fomentamos definitivamente esto, el cambio social, y comenzar en lo que es la política dentro de lo que es la línea que estamos haciendo es un placer para mí, porque además de que trabajo con mi comunidad, llevamos lo que es cambiar y en manos de nosotros está. Políticamente las personas piensan que solamente eso, quienes nos legislan, pero es mucho más. Y yo agradezco al señor Pablo Cáceres, ¿verdad?, por la oportunidad, y a las organizaciones que están detrás de todo esto. Y qué mejor comienzo, ¿verdad? Y bienvenida en este estado y país donde resido, que dentro de lo que es mi profesión, ayudar a la comunidad, ayudar a mi comunidad. Es un placer para mí.
Gracias por tu trabajo, Melissa.
Gracias a ustedes.
Entonces, vi que nos iban a poner unas preguntitas ahí, entonces podemos hacer los closing comments después. Tenemos unas preguntas de la audiencia aquí, así que comencemos con una preguntita de Bernice, y su pregunta es, what are some things to combat against voter suppression during this race? Who wants to take that one?
I mean, puedo mencionar dos cosas. I think one is people knowing their rights, basically, right? Like voters knowing what they can do, what they need to take to the polling place. Is the, you know, knowing that they can take in a translator if they need a translator. Y no dejar que les digan otherwise. Like we often get that judges will make their own decisions, or you know, will just have it wrong, and so people should know their rights. Más like, you know, community wise, one of the things that I know a lot of organizations are doing is making sure that we have some poll monitors, right? These are people that are outside the polling places, some of the heavier visited polling places, because we want to, that are trained, right? That are trained, that know people's rights, that are ready to call if there's anything that goes wrong. And we've done that for several elections, and people have done that for a long time. And then the last thing is, you know, we are looking out for more systematic things that are happening. So, for example, there's been some talk about closing of polling places in Hall County and Fulton County. And you know, as it happens, these are polling places that are mostly in communities of color, Latino and Black. And so we're also talking directly to those counties and supporting groups that are doing this work, to call out some of the more systematic voter suppression that happens in Georgia.
And I would add, I'm going to give you all the phone number. Si hay problemas, llaman este número. This is the Voter Protection Hotline. It's 1-888-730-5816. 888-730-5816. Call this number if you have any issues, pero también enfóquese a dónde van a votar, right? You have to vote in the county in which you are registered in. So that's super important for people to understand their rights. If you go and you're going to drop off your ballot y no se ve bien, don't drop your ballot off unless you are sure it is an official drop box and that it's official for the county in which you're registered in. So see, if you have friends that are going to Fulton County because they want to go to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium or the arena, and you are not registered in Fulton County, don't go with them, okay? You have to understand where your power lies, because if you go to the wrong county to vote, you can ask for a provisional ballot, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee that that is going to count. So make sure that you know your rights, make sure that you're going to the right area, and make sure you're following us on social media so you're getting all the information that you need.
We have one more question from the audience. So Marcos is asking a question for each of you. Who's going to win in Georgia? So who is it?
Pasa, and we're not.
The Democrats.
Yes. I'm so confident just from doing this work, from talking to people, from early voting numbers, and just, you know, what happened in November is historical. I'm like Jenny, I grew up in Gwinnett. I've been here all my life. I never thought in my lifetime I would see Georgia be blue. And it happened. It can happen again. I'm so optimistic. I definitely think this is a win for us.
Well, it's because of you all that it did, and it's going to continue to be. Well, with that, we've come to the end of our amazing panel about the Georgia runoffs. Thank you so much, Melissa, Tanya, Jenny, Stephanie, for being here. Again, appreciate your work.
Thank you.
And hopefully, you know, as more Puerto Ricans go into Georgia, this doesn't stop just here. This work, this partnership, we want to continue working with you all and continuing to support our efforts after January 5th. But without further ado, let's get it.
Thank you.
Rubén, antes que
Thank
nos
you.
vayamos, quiero
Ujú.
aprovechar, ¿verdad? Para darle las gracias a Tania, a Jenny, a las dos canvassers, ¿verdad? Por irnos en su regazo allá en Georgia. De verdad que estamos contentos de poder colaborar con ustedes y que estemos esperamos celebrar ese día 5, poder celebrar y sentarnos en el piso a reírnos y a gozarnos el trabajo que hicimos. Así que también le quiero dar gracias a Marco Vilar, que es un hombre visionario y que pues tiene la mirada puesta no solo en Florida, sino en Georgia y en otros lugares donde él sabe que se puede hacer la diferencia, y le agradecemos, ¿verdad?, la confianza a United for Progress también, que nos ayuda con todo, ¿verdad? Así que muchas gracias a Rubén, que lo llamo tarde y lo molesto. Pero esto es así, no hay descanso hasta el día 6, porque el 5 todavía se trabaja.
Gracias a
Así
todos.
es. Gracias a todos. Follow me on Instagram, y'all. Happy
Thank
Jenny
you, guys.
Smiles.
Please follow Jenny on
Have a
Instagram.
good night.
Please.
Bye, y'all. Good night.
She's
Bye.
amazing. Bye.
See you
Oh,
guys.
stop it.